The Gran Turismo series has been around for about 25 years now, and honestly, it seems like the series is not what it once was. Especially as it relates to, I guess, the 2000s, because that decade was probably when the Gran Turismo series was at its peak. And the reason I say that is because the racing genre of gaming in general was very popular during the 2000s and even like the early teens to some extent. But I remember the 2000s decade, you had games like Gran Turismo 3 and Gran Turismo 4, which were like huge like successes in terms of, I guess, selling worldwide, appealing to a mainstream audience, and those games actually sold more than the original Gran Turismo game from '97, because I believe the original Gran Turismo game from '97 for the PS1 reached over 10 mil, while Gran Turismo 3 and 4 managed to reach over 14 mil and 11 mil respectively. And those two games were like, they drew in a ton of revenue for Sony, and honestly, it was some of Polyphony Digital's best work in relation to racing games. And this was during a time where like the racing genre, it was very competitive because you had so many like big games that came out during that time period. You had games like the Midnight Run series, you had Gotham Racing, which wasn't really a major threat, but it was impressive when it first came out. The Forza series got started in the 2000s. You had Race Driver Grid from 2008. You had the Need for Speed series, which was white hot during the mid 2000s, and it seemed like for the most part, in terms of, I guess, mainstream appeal and popularity, it seemed like in the teens decade, to some extent, Gran Turismo had managed to maintain that level of mainstream appeal to the casuals. Because you look at the teens decade, like in 2010, Gran Turismo 5 managed to reach over 11 mil in sales. I think it did almost 12 million in sales when it came out. And then even with like the PS4 era, Gran Turismo Sport did 8 mil in terms of sales. And it was not everybody's favorite racing game, but at the same time, it was impressive because of the features that were added for this particular game. And you got to realize that like this is a decade where the Forza series started to become more and more popular. And honestly, a lot of people would go on record and tell you that Forza Horizon 3 or Forza Horizon 4 were among two of the best racing games of the teens decade. Because let's face it, it seems like with the Need for Speed series has been hit and miss. Some people like Need for Speed Rivals, and some people liked other installments within the Need for Speed series, depending on who you ask. But the latest Need for Speed game that came out, which was Unbound, I believe, that game was one that it got mixed reviews. Some people thought it was okay. Other people thought, EA could do much better than that. But at the same time, it seemed like the Need for Speed series has been going downhill for quite some time now. And a lot of people are wondering whether or not Gran Turismo is pretty much one of those racing game franchises that's just going to fade away into obscurity over time. I don't think Gran Turismo is necessarily irrelevant. It's just that Gran Turismo 7 was a game that a lot of people didn't like because it was riddled with microtransactions, and there was really nothing unique to make it stand out, to appeal to, I guess, casual gamers, and I guess attract, a mainstream audience or anything like that. But like to this day, I have no idea what the sales number for Gran Turismo 7 is. I don't even know if it hit like 1 million or not. But like normally, like by this time, I mean, or even like before now, like Sony would be bragging about the numbers in relation to Gran Turismo 7 and it being very successful and all that stuff, but it doesn't seem like that's the case right now. And you look at Forza Horizon 5, which came out back in I believe it came out back in 2021, and that's a game that managed to reach like at least 20 million players globally within a year of its release. So obviously, it seems like the Forza series definitely has the lead in terms of, I guess, popularity and I guess attracting casuals, and it being the, I guess, the number one, racing series in relation to gaming in general. But it did seem like the Gran Turismo series started to, I guess, slowly decline after the PS2 era for the most part, because back then, gaming was different. It's like that was back when you could make a video game, or developers can create a video game. You can unlock everything right there and then, and you didn't have to rely on, I guess, putting so much emphasis and detail into developing online multiplayer gameplay and all that. And I do feel that for the most part, the Gran Turismo series is not as popular as it once was, but at the same time, I don't think it would be safe to go on record and say that's necessarily dead either.